Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Middle East Matters here on France 24. I'm Nadia Massi. Here's what's coming up. Money for UNRWA frozen. We'll discuss the allegations staff were involved in the October 7th attacks on Israel and the impact the funding cut will now have amid the crisis in Gaza. Also coming up, Washington promises to respond to the killing of 3 American soldiers in Jordan, but says it is not seeking war with Iran. And we'll take a peek at a new film coming out here in France showing Yemen in a rather different light. It's based on the true story of 2 parents seeking an abortion. But first, we start with the crisis at the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA. Around a dozen donor countries are freezing funding to the agency after Israel made public allegations that 12 UN staffers took part in the Hamas attacks of October the 7th last year. The United Nations has now fired the employees in question and promised a full investigation, but the budget cuts, of course, come at a profoundly challenging time. A quarter of the population in Gaza is now starving, according to the United Nations, and UNRWA is the biggest aid provider in the enclave. Well, our first report takes a closer look then at the history of UNRWA and its role in Palestinian society.
Set up 75 years ago in the aftermath of the First Arab-Israeli War, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, otherwise known as UNRWA, has long been an essential lifeline for the millions of Palestinians registered with the agency. Its objective is to provide humanitarian assistance and protection, supplying a wide range of services. From education, over 500,000 children are enrolled in schools run by the agency, to healthcare and management of around 60 refugee camps. UNRWA plays a crucial role in the Gaza Strip. 13,000 of the agency's more than 30,000 employees work in the enclave, spread across more than 300 facilities. The situation in Gaza was already critical before the events of the 7th of October. According to UN data from August of last year, 63% of the population were suffering from food insecurity and were dependent on international aid, with over 80% living below the poverty line. Most of the funding for UNRWA comes from voluntary contributions from UN member states. In 2022, the top donors were the USA and Germany, with more than $340 million and $202 million respectively, followed by the European Union with $114 million. It adds up to a budget that far surpasses $1 billion.
Well, to talk a bit more about the crisis at UNRWA, I'm very pleased now to be joined by Johann Sufi. He's an international criminal lawyer who ran the agency's legal department from 2020 until last year. Welcome to you. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
We will talk in a moment about the impact of this funding freeze on UNRWA. But first, can I just get your reaction to these allegations that 12 of your former colleagues were apparently involved in those attacks on Israel on October the 7th?
Yeah, these are extremely serious allegations, but I recall that these are 12 people out of more than 13,000 employees who work daily for UNRWA and who have shown a great professionalism and integrity. So I think that we should not punish the entire organization for the behavior of a tiny, tiny minority.
But I presume that you are shocked by these allegations nonetheless.
Yeah, I'm shocked, obviously, because that's very serious allegation for the agency. But, you know, in the Gaza Strip, where Hamas have been the de facto authority for more now than 15 years, obviously there might be some tiny minority who are going to conduct, illegal activities. Mm-hmm. And it's extremely hard for UNRWA to detect these activities when even Israel and the Palestinian authorities, who I recall have the full list of employees, have not raised alert or concern regarding these individuals.
And as you say, these are serious allegations. Dozens of countries, key donors to UNRWA, have announced they're freezing their funding. Do you think that that's a fair decision?
I think that's a collective punishment. First for UNRWA as an organization, but more seriously for the entire population of Gaza who is living, surviving because of the humanitarian assistance that UNRWA has provided. I recall also that the ICJ, in its decision, in its order on 26 January, has said that the act of genocide could be possibly from the imposition of condition of life, which could lead to the destruction of the Palestinian people. So in that context, to stop the funding of the very agency that provides this humanitarian assistance is not only a breach of their legal obligation, but a clear breach of the order of the ICJ.
Those who don't support UNRWA would say it isn't the only organisation working in Gaza. There are other aid groups who are helping Palestinians. What's your response to that?
Well, UNRWA has been the first humanitarian organization responding to the crisis, and this since 1949. So UNRWA is the biggest organization. It is the organization that has the skilled and that has the people, and I don't see also an alternative. I mean, I've not heard this country saying, we're going to suspend the funding of UNRWA, but we're going to trigger immediately humanitarian response. We're going to ask the Israeli to lift all the restrictions to the humanitarian assistance. We've actually seen only one single answer, which is we stop humanitarian help in Gaza.
This isn't the first time that there have been allegations towards UNRWA. Israel's been critical of the UN agency for a long time now. You worked there for 3 years. What was the relationship with Israel and UNRWA like in your time?
It was a very complex relationship because there were a lot of allegations that most of the time were proven not true, but also Israel and its allies know that without UNRWA, that's a major security risk for Israel itself. First, a security risk, but also as the occupying power, Israel has the legal duty to provide humanitarian relief for the population under occupation. So if UNRWA was not there, it will fall on the responsibility of Israel to provide the food, the medical assistance to the population. So very complex relationship indeed.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for your time, for your thoughts today. You've been hearing there from Johann Sufi, the former head of UNRWA's legal department. Now, in other news, the White House has promised to retaliate to an attack in Jordan that killed 3 US soldiers while reiterating that it is not seeking war with Iran. American officials do say that Iran-backed militants were responsible for the deadly drone attack. And the question now is when and how will the US respond? Matthew Mary Karushat has the report.
The United States has released the names of 3 reservists killed Sunday at a remote military base in Jordan. They are Sergeant William Jerome Rivers, Specialist Brianna Alexandria Moffett, and Specialist Kenny LaDon Sanders. All 3 were killed when a drone struck their housing unit.
So all of these different things that she had plans for that, were just cut short in the blink of an eye. So, I just feel like somebody like her that's so full of life, it's just unfair that she'll never get to realize those dreams that she had.
As of June, the United States has about 6,500 troops deployed in Iraq, Syria, and Jordan, many of which are active in the fight against Islamist militant groups. U.S. officials said that American bases in Iraq and Syria alone have been attacked at least 165 times since mid-October. An Iran-affiliated group called the Islamic Resistance has claimed responsibility for Sunday's attack, although Iran itself has denied any involvement. U.S. officials said Monday that the enemy drone may have breached the base because it was confused with a returning American drone, as both were in the air at the same time. Meanwhile, the United States is walking a tightrope in that it seeks to respond without escalating the risks of a wider regional conflict.
We will respond decisively to any aggression, and we will hold responsible the people who attacked our troops. At the same time, we remain focused on our core objectives in the region, both in terms of the conflict in Gaza and broader efforts to build truly durable peace and security.
The United States has also carried out recent strikes against Iran-affiliated groups in the region, including one earlier this month that killed a militia leader in Baghdad.
Well, we end the programme with a look at a film shot in Yemen and just released here in France. The Burdened tells a story distinct from the usual narratives about Yemen, of war, famine and poverty. Instead, this film looks at the taboo issue of abortion through the eyes of two parents who do not want a fourth child. Aurore Dupuis takes us behind the scenes.
Isra and Ahmed live in Aden in the midst of the civil war. Food and water shortages, violence, financial woes. The couple and their 3 children struggle to make ends meet when Isra unexpectedly falls pregnant. They cannot afford to have a 4th child and decide to have an abortion, a taboo in Yemen.
It's a true story. It happened to my friends. They wanted to get an abortion, but it was during the Arab Spring. It was a very difficult period as we didn't have a government.
The Burdened focuses on the couple's doubts, the weight of society, religious beliefs, and a corrupt healthcare system.
There's a thought that deeply touched me. If the situation hadn't been so tough, perhaps the 4th child would be playing with his siblings. This couple had to let go of their baby so that his brothers and sisters could survive.
The director Amar Gamal had great difficulty finishing the movie as the conflict in Yemen rages on.
Everything the audience sees in the movie, we experienced during the shoot. Instability, stress, insecurity, protests. There were weapons everywhere. We had water and electricity cuts.
The Burdened is Gamal's 2nd feature. It's been selected in several international film festivals, including the Berlinale.
Well, that's it from me. That's it for the show this week. Thanks for watching, and do stay with us here on France 24.